Today we will talk about the complete story of Pakistan's independence, from idea to reality. So let's begin. Pakistan is the 39th largest country in the world by area and the 6th largest by population. But for most of history, the territory that would become Pakistan did not exist as an independent state. That is until 1947, when it was formed after the partition of British India. And although the subcontinent had been home to several empires over the years, it had never before been united under one single state. British colonization changed all of that. So what led to the creation of this new nation? Well, we can answer that question by looking at 3 key factors: religion, politics, and territory. We have already established that the subcontinent was not previously united as one state. Instead, it was ruled by the British East India Company from 1757 to 1858. After that date, the British Crown took over ruling the subcontinent until 1947. During the latter part of British rule, the Indian National Congress began to call for independence from colonial rule. This movement was largely supported by Hindus and Muslims. However, as the 2 largest religious groups in India, they had different visions for the future of the country. While both groups were open to the idea of independence, they disagreed on how it should be implemented. In fact, Muslims had good reason to be concerned. In the census of 1891, Muslims made up nearly a quarter of the total population of British India. But by 1941, their share had fallen to just over 1/3. Many Muslims believed that if India became independent, then the Hindus would dominate the new government and oppress them. So it was only natural that Muslims began calling for their own separate state, where they could live according to their own laws and customs. In 1940, the All India Muslim League passed a resolution calling for the establishment of Pakistan, which would serve as a homeland for Indian Muslims. The proposed state would include the regions of Punjab, Sindh, Kashmir, Baluchistan, the northwest frontier province in Assam. As for why these specific regions, it came down to demographics. In each of these areas, Muslims made up a majority of the population. As it turned out, the Muslim League was not the only group advocating for the partition of British India. Some Hindu leaders also supported the idea of Pakistan, believing that it would help prevent large-scale violence between the 2 religions. Others felt that having 2 states would help speed up the process of independence. Still, others saw it as a way to contain communism, which was gaining popularity among some of India's working class. The last thing that any of these parties wanted was for the subcontinent to fall into communist hands. While most political leaders were in favor of a peaceful transition, there were some who took a more radical approach. Mahatma Gandhi was certainly no fan of British rule. But the leader of India's independence movement wasn't exactly in favor of Pakistan either. He advocated for a united and independent India that would serve as a homeland for all Indians, regardless of their religious background. According to Gandhi, Muslims and Hindus could coexist peacefully under one state, provided that religious minorities were given adequate protections. Then there was Muhammad Ali Jinnah, also known as the Quaid-e-Azam, or Great Leader. He was the founder of Pakistan and the first person to hold the title of Governor-General. Jinnah was educated in England, where he initially advocated for a greater degree of self-rule within British India. However, after witnessing the rise of European fascism and Nazism, he grew convinced that Muslims could only be safe in their own separate state. In his famous August 11th speech, he stated, "I submit that the only possible way to resolve this deadlock is to fashion the 2 into 2 independent states." With so much support for independence, it seemed likely that the British would eventually hand over power to a single Indian government. However, this was not the case. Perhaps the British realized that it would be too difficult to control a post-colonial India, or maybe they simply didn't want to lose their foothold in the region. Whatever the reason, the British decided to leave, and they proposed a plan to divide the subcontinent into 2 separate states, Pakistan and India. Although the exact borders were still in dispute, the general idea was accepted by most political parties, except for Gandhi, who felt that this violated his vision for a united India. Regardless, the plan went forward with Lord Mountbatten being appointed as Viceroy of India with the task of overseeing the transition. To make matters more complicated, he only had 6 months to do so. As it turned out, Mountbatten spent the first 3 months of his appointment arguing with politicians over the details of the partition. While Jinnah wanted to see the Muslim-majority regions of Bengal and Assam included in Pakistan, Indian leaders opposed this. Ultimately, these regions were awarded to India. By May, it was clear that a final agreement would need to be reached soon. Otherwise, the 6-month deadline would be up, and the subcontinent would be thrown into chaos. On June, Lord Mountbatten summoned the leaders of India and Pakistan to New Delhi to sign the last Treaty of Mountbatten. The agreement officially transferred power to the two new states and outlined how the division would take place. It gave both countries 3 months to sort out the details. The treaty also granted Pakistan control over the heavily Muslim-populated regions of Punjab and Sindh, while India received the predominantly Hindu regions of Jammu and Kashmir and Assam. Once again, though the exact borders were still being disputed, there was also the issue of what would happen to Muslims living in India and Hindus living in Pakistan. The treaty stipulated that people would be allowed to move to the country of their choice. This created a massive logistical problem, especially since millions of people ended up taking advantage of the offer. Meanwhile, other aspects of the subcontinent's division were even more problematic. Before the split, the princely states enjoyed a great deal of autonomy. Now that Britain was gone, they were faced with the decision of joining either India or Pakistan. Between 1947 and 1949, most of the larger states chose to join India, while smaller ones were integrated into Pakistan. Of the remaining few, Kashmir's decision remains the most contentious to this day. You see, when India and Pakistan were formed, the ruler of Kashmir signed the instrument of accession, which formally joined the state to India. However, Pakistan disputes this agreement and claims that the ruler's signature was a forgery. This has led to decades of conflict between the two nations and has prevented South Asia from achieving lasting peace. But that's not the end of the story. There was still the matter of the Radcliffe Line, which divided Punjab and Bengal between India and Pakistan. The line itself was drawn without taking local demographics into account. This meant that many Muslims found themselves living in India, while many Hindus were in Pakistan. Violence quickly broke out along the border. Millions were forced to flee their homes in order to settle in the country of their choice. By January of 1948, violence had escalated to such an extent that British troops were called in to restore order. When the troops withdrew the following month, control of the situation fell to Indian and Pakistani forces. These military interventions led to further clashes, resulting in the First Kashmir War. Tensions were high throughout 1948 and 1949, but by 1950, things had calmed down significantly. Both countries had suffered enough and were ready to reach a compromise. The result was the Karachi Agreement, which settled most of the outstanding border disputes. It also put an end to large-scale violence, although cross-border conflicts continued to occur throughout the years. In the end, the partition of India led to the creation of modern-day Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India. For the millions who had to flee their homes, it was a traumatic experience. But for the rest, it offered a new beginning. We hope that we have done justice to the complex history of this fascinating topic. If you found this video interesting, please consider subscribing and leaving a comment below with your thoughts. Thank you for watching.